and is just really throwing every line he's got into the water and seeing if something bites. Another school of thought says, no, don't look at it that way. The way to look at this is that Mueller is not going away till he gets Trump. And everything is still wide open. Mueller is still looking at collusion. Mueller is still looking at obstruction. Mueller is looking at Trump's business before he became president. This is a bad sign for the president, says this version, says this opinion of the leak. And Trump should take no comfort from this whatsoever. Other people say, this is great. This is going to show the American people what an overbroad fishing expedition this is. And if all of these questions remain unanswered, then what does Mueller have? And the conclusion would be Mueller doesn't have anything. We've had Rod Rosenstein, who's publicly said that he's told Trump that Trump is not a target, parentheses, yet. That he's only a subject. But, of course, a subject can be converted to a target. These questions, some would say, are designed to make a subject become a target based on the way they are answered. Trump was out very quickly with tweets referring to the fact that this is evidence of a witch hunt, that there's no even acknowledgement of any crime in these questions. Specifically, collusion isn't mentioned. The president tweets only possible obstruction. So it's still open-ended as to what all of this really means. One of the lawyers in the swamp that used to work for Mueller way back when in the 90s and has been one of the TV legal analysts defending Bill Clinton all during the Monica Lewinsky cycle is a guy named Michael Zeldin, and he's now a CNN legal analyst. Of course, who's not associated with CNN these days on the Get Trump side of things? And he believes that Trump leaked these questions. He believes that Trump himself ordered the leak of these questions, and he thinks so because of the grammatical errors that are in the questions. I think these are notes. This is what Zeldin says. I think these are notes taken by the recipients of a conversation with Mueller's office, that'd be Trump's lawyers, where Mueller outlined broad topics and Trump's lawyers wrote down questions that they thought these topics may raise. In other words, Zeldin thinks these are not really Mueller questions, that in the negotiations between Trump's lawyer and Mueller over a potential Trump sit-down, Mueller has given broad areas of his interest to the lawyer. Yeah, I'd like to ask Trump about X, and I'd like to ask Trump about Y. And then Zeldin says that Trump's lawyers then went and created the questions based on the generic interests that were expressed by Mueller. He said because of the way these questions are written, lawyers wouldn't write questions this way, in my estimation. Some of the grammar is not even proper. So I don't see this as a list of written questions that Mueller's office gave to the president's lawyers. I think these are more notes that the White House has taken, and then they have expanded upon the conversation in Mueller to write out these questions and then to leak them to the New York Times. Now, just so you know who Zeldin is, special counsel to Mueller in the early 90s when he served as the Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. You want to hear some of these questions? One question directly asks Trump about Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. During the campaign, what did you know about Russian hacking, Russian use of social media, or other acts aimed at the campaign? That's one of the questions. Another question. What knowledge did you have of any outreach by your campaign, including by Paul Manafort, to Russia about potential assistance to the campaign? Now, you can imagine that the drive-bys have zeroed in on that one because Manafort is now under indictment. So the drive-bys think that question means that Manafort's crimes are not specifically tied to things he did long before the Trump campaign, that this specific question links Manafort to the collusion. And they're orgasming at CNN today because of this particular question. Again, what knowledge did you have of any outreach by your campaign, including by Paul Manafort, to Russia about potential assistance to the campaign. Now, it says here at New York Post, not clear whether Mueller has evidence that Manafort or any other Trump official coordinated with Russia. Trump has repeatedly denied any collusion. Concerning James Comey, Mueller wants to know about the times Trump met privately with him and why he fired him. Why he fired Comey. Now, Trump is perfectly within his constitutional rights to fire Comey, and he doesn't have to offer anybody an excuse or a reason. He can fire Comey because he doesn't like how tall he is. He can fire Comey because his hands are too big. He can fire Comey because he thinks Comey's ties are too short. He can fire Comey for, but Mueller wants to know why you did it. And if the question's legit, then this is an entrapment question about trying to get Trump to open up about what he really thinks of Comey, what he got rid of him, and thereby spell out what Trump was really trying to do is hide things. He was afraid Comey was going to... I can predict what the purpose of these questions is. But I don't know, there's something about this that still, it's a trap, obviously, but some of this just does not meet the smell test to me. And I can't specify for you right now what it is. But I've noticed how everybody is not even questioning whether Mueller actually is the source of these questions or the information that became these questions. They're just running with it. It was in the New York Times. Everybody's treating this as factual. There's no question this is real. There's no question it's serious. It just all seems, when everybody gets on a bandwagon, when everybody starts signing up to the identical conventional wisdom, that's when my radar goes up, red flags. Something about this, and I'm sorry, I can't specify it. I can't even specify what it is about this that bothers me. I don't know that it could be the whole thing half legitimate, half fake. Don't know. Just never seen anything like this. We've had special counsels and independent counsels my whole life, and I have never, ever seen anything like this happen during any of these investigations. I've never seen this kind of detailed, in-depth uncovering of what the special counsel is thinking, doing, wants to know. These guys, just that you never see it. And here we've pretty much everything that Mueller could possibly be interested in has shown up now in the New York Times. And Trump is tweeting about it almost immediately. I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump team did find a way to get this out, because in their view, it probably, they think, helps their circumstance, if their circumstance is to keep Trump from talking to Mueller. That'd be the biggest mistake Trump could make during all of this, is to sit down and have that conversation. And if we're to believe the reporting is that everybody on Trump's team is telling him not to do it, and he's ignoring everybody and is hell-bent on doing it. And so this is a Hail Mary attempt to try to get Trump to realize the suicide pact he would be signing if he sat down and started taking these questions and trying to answer them. And of all of the possibilities, that seems to me to be the one that makes the most sense. But I still have something gnawing at me that this is not really what it is. And I probably shouldn't say that, because I'm not prepared to tell you what I think it is. Just sharing with you a gut reaction that something here is not lining up. It doesn't make sense. The drive-bys are too happy about it. And we know how much literal garbage and drivel has shown up in the New York Times during the entire course of this investigation. And we know how much has shown up that has no basis in fact whatsoever, no truth, no facts whatsoever. And so now we're told all of a sudden somebody got hold of everything Mueller wants to know about. Everybody got hold of it. Somebody did, and here it is. And now we know everything Mueller's scope of interest entails. Mueller also reportedly wants to ask Trump about his statements about Comey and Andrew McCabe. What is the reason for your continued criticism of Mr. Comey and his former deputy Andrew McCabe? One question. Are you kidding? What? This is actually something Mueller wants to know. Why are you continuing to criticize Comey? Would somebody tell me, where are the legal boundaries in that? Is Trump doing something illegal by criticizing Comey? No, of course not. If this is real, it means that Mueller believes if he asks this question, that Trump is going to start on a diatribe of hatred and whatever he thinks about Comey and McCabe, and is eventually going to implicate himself. But this doesn't make any sense. Neither does, what did you think when you found out I was going to be hired to pursue you? What did you think and what did you do? Why do you keep criticizing Comey? Why do you keep saying mean things about my buddy? I don't know, folks. I take a break here. We'll unpack all this, continue to, as the program unfolds right after this. What was your reaction to Comey when you met alone regarding the Steele dossier? What was your reaction to Comey? What was discussed regarding ancillary reports? This is an attempt to get Trump. I mean, these questions are just, they're questions for a sap. I mean, nobody in their right mind would ever try, even if this was just a reporter doing a news story. Forget that this is a lawyer that could put you in jail for lying to him by simply forgetting. Because if Trump sits down for this, and Mueller starts asking these questions, he's going to ask for another. He's asked the questions all over again. He's going to start comparing Trump's answers. That's where you get a process crime of lying to investigators. If Trump forgets what he said to Mueller the first time and says a different version the second time the question comes around. My friend Andy McCarthy thinks, and has written this in the past, thinks that what all of this indicates is that Mueller is preparing to write a comprehensive report in which he answers all questions about Russia and defends the law enforcement and intelligence services by saying, even though there may have been some investigative irregularities, that the main problem here was Trump's poor judgment, which will then give Mueller leeway to weigh in on matters of Trump's decision-making and have nothing to do with whether Trump is guilty of crimes. So it's basically, Andy thinks that what Mueller is setting up here is a very extensive report, essentially asserting that Donald Trump is a disaster when it comes to presidential judgment and qualifications and so forth. That would be absent any hard finding of criminal activity. To President Trump that he go ahead and sit down for an interview with Mueller. And yeah, I can think of some things that if I were Trump's lawyers, I would demand. I would demand to testify, but not under oath, like Mrs. Clinton. I would demand an exoneration letter before I sat down, like Comey gave Hillary. And then I would demand an exoneration letter after the interview. And then I would demand that a bunch of my assistants and aides be allowed to sit in on the interview. And I want to be able to call them lawyers so that I have attorney-client privilege with them so that nothing can happen to them. And then I want it stipulated at the end of the interview, like it was with James Comey and Hillary Clinton, that whatever went on here, there's nothing to it because I didn't intend to do anything wrong. If Trump could secure the same identical circumstances that were granted to Hillary Clinton, then why not sit down for the interview and answer the questions? But of course, I speak facetiously because everybody knows that Donald Trump is not going to get the Hillary Clinton treatment extended by James Comey. And can you imagine if he did? Can you imagine the American left and the media if Trump got the same treatment Hillary did? Okay, Mr. President, We're not going to have you under oath. We're going to interview you, by the way, 2 days before we issue our report. That's another thing. We're going to issue our report on Monday, and we're going to interview you on Saturday, and only for 3 hours. We're going to give you an exoneration letter before the interview begins. Anybody you want in the meeting with you, we're going to call an attorney so you have attorney-client privilege. When the meeting is over, the interview is over, we're going to issue another exoneration letter. And then we're going to say that whatever you did is not prosecutable or actionable because we couldn't find that you intended to do any of it. You imagine what if Trump were afforded or extended all of those privileges as Hillary was. You imagine what CNN, the drive-by media, would do with it. Let me give you just a couple more examples of questions here, and then we'll move on to other things. And if you want to weigh in on this, feel free. Have at it when we get to the phones. There are 4 here at the very tail end of this list. I don't know if these questions, as I have them, are in any chronological order or not, but they are the last 4. What knowledge did you have of any outreach by members or former members of your campaign to Russia offering potential assistance to the campaign? Note specifically mentioned Paul Manafort. Now, I mentioned that one previously because, and the reason that everybody's harping on this one is that heretofore, Manafort's indictment and the allegations against Manafort have nothing to do with the campaign. Manafort's under indictment for having engaged in supposed criminal activity back in, prior to 2015, 2016. But now that Mueller wants to ask Trump about using Manafort to reach out to the Russians, well, what knowledge did you have of communications with or regarding Roger Stone, persons associated with Roger Stone, Julian Assange, or WikiLeaks? These questions come right out of the media, folks. Try this one. What knowledge did you have during the transition of an attempt to establish back-channel communications to Russia and the efforts by Jared Kushner regarding the same? Now, folks, there wasn't any attempt to establish back-channel communications. If Trump had colluded, there already would have been back-channel communications. If Trump and Russia colluded to steal the election, they would have already had numerous back-channel communications. And this is a question about Jared Kushner trying to establish one during the transition, which is after the election. This is straight out of the New York Times and CNN. If this is legit, this is Mueller reading the news and coming up with questions about what appears in the news. Now, Mueller may have leaked a bunch of that stuff, his office. But this is all about the honeypot Russian lawyer, Veselnitskaya, came into Trump Tower supposedly with dirt on Hillary. Jared was in there with Don Jr., and when they found out this woman didn't have any dirt on Hillary, that was a scam to get her in there to talk about some piece of legislation, they all left the meeting. But news media reports had this meeting established as Jared wanting to set up a back-channel communication with the Russians, which is absurd if there was any collusion to begin with. And what knowledge do you have of a 2017 meeting in Seychelles, France, regarding Eric Prince of Blackwater? What knowledge do you have of a Ukrainian peace proposal provided to Michael Cohen in 2017? Straight out of the news media. But these questions are they're huge, gigantic traps, because if Mueller's asking them, none of them are illegitimate. No matter how extraneous, off-topic, off-subject they appear to be, they are, at the very least, they are traps to ensnare people in process crimes. And they go way beyond any original reason for Mueller being hired to begin this work, the so-called collusion, so forth. So we'll see how it unfolds. I do agree with the idea that the leak may have come from a former Trump lawyer not currently on the legal team. The express purpose here being to advise, shock, really suggest to the president that this is a dumb idea to sit down and talk to this guy, no matter how much you think of yourself, no matter how good you think you are at dazzling people. That's not what this is about, and you can't change the way Mueller is thinking with the force of your personality. You know, I've equated this to an educational moment for me when I first started this program. I had no experience being interviewed by the media. I mean, maybe a little in Sacramento, but it was nothing that was truly intended to be injurious to me. So I had no experience with it. And when the show begins and it takes off, I mean, the first 6 months to a year, we're just adding stations left and right, and it is, I mean, everybody's talking about it, biggest news in the world. The media is calling. I remember a particular interview in Los Angeles. A reporter for the Los Angeles Times wanted to talk to me before I had a Rush to Excellence appearance out there. And I made the silly mistake. It was an honest mistake. I didn't know any better. I made the silly mistake of assuming this reporter really wanted to know who I was. It really wanted to know why my program was succeeding, and really wanted to know what I thought about things. And this reporter could not have cared less. The reporter had already made up her mind about me, and it was not good. Her story was already written, and there was nothing I could do, nothing I could have done that would have changed her mind. I didn't know that. I was so stupid and naive. I thought these people were genuinely interested in something that was brand new, that nobody could explain, that didn't exist before, and they wanted to try to understand why it was happening. That was not at all what she was interested in. Her purpose was to marginalize me and categorize me as an extremist radical on the right, and that my audience was a bunch of hayseed hick kooks, and all. And that's that. And every other story about this, I learned that the last thing any of these media interviews were really about was the reporter learning anything or becoming informed. It was not because they were genuinely curious. They were resentful. And I and my program were something they had to try to damage. And that's exactly what Mueller would be doing in a sit-down with Trump. Mueller's not interested in Trump's version of the truth. Mueller thinks he already knows it. Mueller doesn't care what Trump's successes are. He doesn't care about any of that. And there's nothing Trump could do to change Mueller's mind. Whatever Mueller thinks now, there's nothing Trump could do to change his mind. Because this whole process is about damaging Trump. And anything Trump might say, any information Trump might have that would change Mueller's mind, Mueller isn't going to hear. He's not going to react to it. It's not the purpose of a sit-down. Mueller doesn't want to talk to Trump to learn anything. Mueller doesn't want to talk to Trump to get Trump's side of things. Mueller doesn't want to talk to Trump to actually find out what Trump's thinking. All of this is nothing more than Mueller using his power as special counsel and lawyer to use Trump's own participation in getting Trump to commit a crime, to admit to one or to commit one while he's talking to Mueller. That's all this is. You ever heard of any independent or special counsel at the end of his investigation writing a report saying, after 2 years of exhaustive investigation and study, we have found nobody who did anything wrong? Do you ever remember that? No, because it hasn't happened. After 2 years, or however long it's going to be, and however many lawyers he's got helping, and after however much money, the last thing that's going to happen is anybody get exonerated here. If this is all designed to wake Trump up and say, look, pal, forget who you are, forget who you dazzle. You can't dazzle the guy. You can't make him believe your version of things. Their minds are already made up. You're not qualified to be president. You shouldn't have won. And their purpose is to get rid of you. And if you help them, then their job's going to be easier. And that's what they're looking for you to do. They're looking for you, Mr. President, to help them get rid of you. By a former Trump lawyer in order to try to convince President Trump not to talk to Mueller, why would they have to leak the questions for Trump to see them? Why couldn't Trump's lawyers show him the questions, say, man, you do not want to have any part of this. You don't have to talk to this guy. And the fact that this is what he wants to ask you, but there's no way. Why leak these? Why make them public if the purpose is to persuade Trump to stay away? You wouldn't have to leak them unless there is some advantage these people might think in public pressure on Trump. Trump's supporters seeing this and also joining the chorus. They're saying that Trump should not sit down. You know, Trump pays attention to what his supporters think. So let's go to the phones and find out what kind of neurons are floating around in your skulls out there. We're going to start with Marcus, Farmington Hills, Michigan. Great to have you, Marcus. How you doing?
Good, good. Listen, one big point here. The whole thing has to be fake. There's no way these could have been written up by any attorney. I was sitting here at the beginning of your show when you first mentioned that thing about how did you feel when you found out I was going to investigate. No lawyer in his right mind, after a year and a half of all this stuff, would ask Trump such a silly question. Maybe if they were sitting around over coffee or something. But on a legal thing, if he's interviewing him, he wouldn't answer such a stupid question.
Now, wait, but let's remember who and what we're dealing with here. In the first place, it has been reported that these are not actual questions written by Mueller.
Well, then I could go along with that, maybe. But even so, it doesn't make sense. Some of the questions that you've read later on in the show here, okay, maybe he would ask those. But some of them, it just doesn't seem professional at all. So it seems like somebody wrote these up, and then whatever
they did, they
got it.
The story is that Trump's lawyers wrote these questions as summaries of what Mueller told them he wants to ask Trump. So Trump's lawyers prepared these. And
it could be, but like you just said 5 seconds ago, why leak anything? What's going on here? They're trying to create some kind of a facade again or something? Nah,
well,
I don't believe it.
There's two possible answers to that, depending on who's leaking. One scenario is that these questions demonstrate the overbroad, ridiculous, expansive nature of this investigation, and that we're nowhere near the end of it if he still wants to know this stuff. The other end, that leaking this stuff is designed to demonstrate the special counsel doesn't have anything and is designed to take the winds out of the sails of Mueller by totally destroying whatever surprise he could have intended to hit Trump with.
Yeah. Could be, but if they actually came from Mueller and somebody actually leaked them, which you find so highly unlikely, just because the whole idea of the collusion, something would have leaked out, halfway sounding legitimate about that long time
Since
ago.
you are so highly suspicious of all of this, what do you? What do you think this is then?
Well, I think somebody wrote it up again because we're coming to a head here with Trump a little bit with the whole Korean thing and the Iran thing, and he's starting to look real good, out in the media. He's starting to look real good on Fox News and all that. Everybody's praising him.
He always looks good on Fox News.
Well, yeah, but you got the guy from South Korea, the leader, saying Trump should get a Nobel Prize this week. How about that? And I know he's a friend of his also, but the thing is, so much is looking positive for Trump that I think the left is going to have to keep throwing out.
Well, you know what? Hey, Marcus, hang on. You may have a point here because at the top of my stack after this question stuff is a story at thehill.com today. Gallup, Trump approval rating reaches 11-month high. President Trump's weekly approval rating has hit an 11-month high, according to polling data released by Gallup yesterday. The data found
the left hates this.
Oh, they do. His approval numbers continue to skyrocket. It looks like he's going to win the Korea Peninsula thing that nobody's been able to win for 50 years. The economy is going great. Things are going well. You think this is designed to remind everybody that Trump is actually a reprobate and stole the election?
Well, they want to keep that whole thing going, at least if they can until the 2018, the midterms. And if he keeps looking positive, and if he actually solves this whole thing with North Korea, that is so huge.
Yeah.
That is so huge on the world stage, not just the United States.
Right. If he gets us out of Obama's fake Iran deal, that's another one.
That's another one. And if he solves something over there, and you even got Condi Rice coming out today and saying, yeah, go ahead, pull out of the thing, man. And, you know, she's a highly respected person, huh?
She is, and a member at Augusta National. So she says, you know, I wouldn't necessarily have pulled out because I'd want to be able to manage the whole process, but I don't think it's going to be any harm pulling out. Okay, I got to quickly go. Give me a quick answer to the question. What do you think? What did you think and do when you heard that I was going to be hired to investigate you? That's one of these questions that Mueller wants to ask Trump. What do you think?
Yeah, to me, a professional attorney would never ask somebody in Trump.
Well, I know, but you've got to remember what this is all about. I got to take a break. I'm out of time. We'll be back. The official program observer, Mr. Bo Snerdley, with a question. What's the question? If the question from the official program observer is if I were Mueller, you mean Mueller, if I were Mueller and I'm looking at all this today, would I be aghast? Would I be angry? Would I be ticked off? Would I be mad at Michelle, what's her name, from the White House course? Would I be wanting to correct the record here? Nope. If I'm Mueller, I don't care what's in the public. If I'm Mueller, the more confusion about what I'm doing, the better. If I'm Mueller, the more mystery and the more confusion, the more frustration about what I'm doing, the better. If I'm Mueller, I don't give a rat's rear end about public opinion. Or if I cared about public opinion, I wouldn't be doing any of this if I'm Mueller. I don't care about public opinion. Public opinion is why I'm here. I think public opinion's full of it. They elected Trump. I'm here in spite of public opinion. Why would I, Robert Mueller, care about public opinion? I am a lawyer. I'm a special counsel. The people with their opinions have no idea what I'm doing. They can't possibly understand what I do. Even if I told them, they're not smart enough to know what I'm doing. So I don't care what they think. Mueller couldn't care less. You know what? Because of the question from the official program observer, I need to go back. Grab audio soundbite number 1. Let me remind you what this is all about. This is June 16th, 2017, me on this program. Donald Trump must be destroyed simply because he's there. Donald Trump has to be taken out. He has to be destroyed and ruined politically, and if they can, financially. Make no mistake that that's an objective, too. You can read between the lines of the latest leaks of the highly respected, immensely respected Robert Mueller, the independent counsel, going after Trump's money, going after Jared Kushner. They are not going to leave one stone unturned in their effort to demolish, to ruin, to destroy Donald Trump. They want to obliterate the star. They want to create a figure of great shame and embarrassment, and they want to take away from him all of his achievements, including his money. If they can. But that was not my only warning. I also, February 27th of this year, had this to say. The Mueller gang is not going to quit until they find something that they can nail Trump with. I am reliably told that Mueller has not given up on the whole collusion angle. The conventional wisdom is that there isn't any evidence that Trump colluded with Russia, and so Mueller is moved on now to trying to prove obstruction of justice. That Trump has stood in the way of justice being done in the United States. But the intel that I have from deep state sources tells me that Mueller has not given up the collusion angle. That Mueller's not given up any angle. So you want to ask me again, if I'm Mueller and I see all this stuff out there that's so wrong and so out of context, I might want to correct the record. You think? Has Mueller said anything since this began? He's gone up there. I guess he's answered a couple questions before some committees, but it was insignificant. Mueller hadn't said anything. His legal team hadn't said anything. Spokesman said a few things and nobody can remember what they are. He doesn't care. Independent. Special. I'm better than you. I'm different than you. I have integrity. You don't. I have a great reputation. You don't. By the way, does anybody remember? Obama said he knew the Russians were colluding. Does anybody remember this? Trump did not collude. There isn't any evidence for it. And yet Mueller wants to question Trump, where Obama told us all that he knew of Russian election corruption. He told Putin to cut it out. Remember? He told Putin to cut it out, and that was supposed to scare Putin so badly that Putin would stop doing it. Obama had intelligence reports that the Russians were colluding. Obama went public and said it would not be possible for an outside actor or player to sway a presidential election. And by the way, Obama was right about this. Our elections are way too complex. You wouldn't know what to tamper with. You couldn't tamper with all of it. Nobody could. No one political party could tamper with every aspect of a federal presidential election. Russia, the Chi-Coms, they couldn't. And Obama was dead right on when he said there's too much that you don't know that you would have to try to fix, but you can't do it anyway. You'd have to know which states are up for grabs electoral college-wise. We have too many precincts, too many polling places, too many different ways from state to state that elections are conducted. It would be impossible. Obama said all of this, folks. Cookie, go get me the sound bites. We've played them. They're in our archive, and they range from 2015 all the way through 2016. Obama said he knew of collusion. Obama said it would be impossible. He was trying to assure everybody after telling us that the Russians were tampering and trying to. He assured us it couldn't happen. Well, okay, then why is all of this happening then? Obama had intelligence reports the Russians tampered. He stood down. We know that Obama's FBI misled or conspired with at least one FISA judge. We know that Obama's DOJ was thoroughly politicized. We know that they were working overtime to prevent Trump from winning, and then after he won, doing everything they could to smear him. We know that Comey is a leaker and a liar. We know that Trump is a victim of so much of this. And Mueller is now down to looking for process crimes with these questions for Trump. The wrong people are being queried here. If you want to make real news, somebody leak that Mueller has questions for Hillary, that Mueller has questions for Christopher Steele, that Mueller has questions for Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS. Somebody leaked that Mueller has questions for Obama. Somebody leaked that Mueller has questions for Comey and McCabe, because these are the people who need to be answering questions, not Donald Trump. Again, folks, all of this is happening because of a fake dossier. Every bit of this. I don't care. Every question that's leaked in this news story today, the New York Times, that Mueller supposedly wants answers to, all of this. This is what frosts me to the point that I start losing my temper over this. All of this is based on something that is fraudulent and phony, the Steele dossier. Every bit of this, which is disrupting our country, which is ruining people's lives. When I say ruining, it has the potential to do great damage. Look at what these people are doing to the public perceptions of our presidential elections. And they all know it's a lie. They all know it's bogus. They all know that Russia could not have determined the winner of the presidential election. They could not have. Obama himself said so. And yet, what are we doing? We've got this endless investigation on the premise that Trump did indeed cheat with the Russians. And that's never been established. It can't be established because it didn't happen. The place it's alleged, the Steele dossier, is fiction. It's made up. It's mind-boggling what is happening here. And the introduction of these questions into the public domain today, they don't help. I don't care what your interpretation of them is. They do not help, because ultimately what they do is sustain the idea that somebody cheated here, that this election was not legitimate, and that somebody has the answers to it. And since it didn't happen, nobody has those answers. And yet we continue to pursue it. Why? Take you back to audio soundbite number 1. Donald Trump must be destroyed. simply because he's there. Donald Trump has to be taken out, removed. He has to be ruined politically. All because he won, not because he cheated, but because he won. Looked at another way, because Hillary lost. The irony, these people thought they were the ones that had wired the election. When you get right down to brass facts, these are the people that thought they had Hillary guaranteed to win. They thought they had done everything necessary. In fact, they looked at Trump winning a nomination as the exclamation point on their landslide. Trump getting a nomination on the Republican side was the best news they had had. No way could Trump win. Trump was going to get 20% of the vote. He's going to take the Republican Party down the tubes with him. It was going to be the end of any opposition. Hillary was going to win. The fix was in as far as they're concerned. And everything they planned for, every step they took to ensure a Hillary Clinton outcome blew up in their faces. And this must not be permitted. This is not allowed. And so everything that's happened since election night has been to reverse that. And virtually everything being investigated, somebody did it or tried. And it's all on the Democrat side. Starting with Obama, who told us he knew the Russians were colluding, who told us it was impossible for the Russians to actually determine the outcome of a presidential election. Quick timeout. We'll be back. Does that answer your question, Mr. Snerdley? Good. Okay, we'll be back here in just a second. State Department's a State Department, but they had a bunch of people that were in a camera angle that were seated behind Pompeo. They looked pretty happy. They didn't look they didn't look this way when Tillerson first showed up. And it wasn't because of Tillerson. It was because Obama was gone. But there are some... well, look, there's a guy with a cochlear implant there talking to Pompeo, right? I see that guy, the red-headed guy with no hair on his right. He's with a cochlear implant. Hot damn. There he is now leaving camera stage right. Okay, back to the phones we go. This is Crawford, Bayshore, Long Island. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello, sir. Crawford, are you there? Testing 1, 2, 3. He's not there. Crawford, are you there? Well, what Crawford was going to say is that he believes that the leak of these questions is the handiwork of Rudy Giuliani. That he is the latest addition to the Trump legal team, that he understands what's going on. Now, the New York Times said that their information, these questions, were provided to them by somebody outside the Trump legal team. That's why learned legal beagles believe it's John Dowd, who's a former member of the Trump legal team who resigned in frustration over supposedly Trump not listening to him about not talking to Mueller. Rudy Giuliani. I remember Rudy when he took the gig, he said his objective was to get this thing wrapped up in 2 to 3 weeks. Now that, of course, I don't think was meaning in an exact 2 to 3 week time period, but to move this thing along and get it wrapped up. If you think this is Giuliani's handiwork, does this do that? Does the release it? I'm just asking. I'm not asking with a preconceived answer here behind the question. I'm asking it open-ended. Do you think the leak and publication of these questions furthers us toward an end to the investigation? And if you think that, I'd like to know why. Because these questions strike me as the questions you'd have on day one. And we're into the second year of this. And these questions should have been answered long ago, not by Trump, but I guarantee you their investigations got some of these questions answered already. But they want Trump's take on it. If all this is legit, proof that this is about getting Trump. Okay, Kevin in St. Louis, you're next. We'll give you a shot. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Russ, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Just real quickly, I think that the reason Donald Trump wants to do the interview is because he's, as I've said before, he's fully prepared for this. He knew this was going to happen. He's got information he can use against them if they try to bring anything on him. And
whoa! Let's not just race through this. Information on who?
On I think, well, like Comey, for one thing. If you remember, he was fired when he was in Los Angeles. So I'm sure that they raided his office and took his computers and have information there. And like I said, I think that Donald Trump knew this was going to happen. So he's got, and it's phony. So there's really nothing that they can do to him that he's not prepared for.
Yes, there is. There's things they can do to anybody, no matter how prepared. Ask Martha Stewart. Ask Scooter Libby. It's not complicated at all. Here's just one example. You have an interview with Mr. Trump. You ask Mr. Trump, what time was it when you had breakfast on the day you fired Comey? I don't know, 8:30, 8:45. Thank you, write it down. At the end of the interview, you tell the president that we might need some follow-ups. We'll submit them in writing. Mr. Trump, we're confused here. What time again did you say you had breakfast on the day you fired Comey? And if it doesn't come back 8:45 to 9, hello, process crime, lying to investigators. And they can create a process crime anytime they want. If you sit down and talk to them, the truth goes out the window. You've got to, Mueller, even using your example, Trump wants to do this because he's got some dirt on Comey that nobody knows. And in an interview with Mueller, he could divulge this info on Comey. I guarantee you that if Mueller wanted to go get Comey, he would have done it long ago. If Comey was subject, if Comey was a person of interest, and he ought to damn well be, is the point, but he's not, that we know of. Now, you may think my example is crazy, but it's not, folks. These kinds of process crimes are used, these are attempted often. And now remember, police officers can lie in interrogations in order to get confessions. Supreme Court has said so. Kevin, thanks. Richard, Washington, D.C., you're next. Great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hey, Rush. It's great to talk to you, and I appreciate the points that you're making. Just want to make 3 quick points. First of all, I disagree with your initial caller. Open-ended questions are not unprofessional. In fact, they're exactly the kinds of questions that professional police investigators live off of. They want to ask those questions and get responses to them to see what's there worth plumbing, worth mining. And if you give them stuff through open-ended questions, that's exactly what they're looking for.
Especially if you got a talker like Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Second point, that list of questions that you were reading from is not an inclusive list. There's no guarantee that there aren't other questions on that list. In fact, I'm sure that there are. And there may be questions generated in the interview itself
right.
that aren't on that list. And the third point is, as you just so aptly stated, the Supreme Court has long established that investigators can lie to you in the course of an investigation, but you can't lie to them. That's what sting operations are all about. A sting operation is a giant contrived lie, and the police investigators employ those all the time. So,
Richard, I have to take a break coming up in 10 seconds. Can you wait? I've got one thing else I want to ask you on the other side of the break. Can you hang on?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Great, thanks much. We'll take a brief time out and come back in mere moments. Holding on. I want to, in addition to having one other question for you, I want to run something by you on the open-ended nature of the questions. You're exactly right, but let me ask you this. You sound like somebody with some experience, and if a prosecutor actually has evidence of a crime and is trying to prove it, what is the likelihood the questions would not be open-ended? If he's got somebody, he's got a defendant, he's got somebody on the witness stand, or somebody he's investigating, and he's actually trying to prove a known crime. He knows the crime's been committed. He's got evidence of it. He's not going to ask open-ended questions at that point, is he? He's going to bear in with specifics.
Well, Rush, it depends on what the evidence is that he has. If he has conclusive...
No, my point is, when there's no evidence is when you would go open-ended and hope the perp just starts vomiting things at you so that you can then maybe tie some things together or go after intent.
Well, when you want to lock your case down, that's when you start asking the open-ended questions. And most prosecutors appreciate that a target or a person of interest who sits down with them and asks open-ended questions. Prosecutors appreciate the opportunity that presents, and that's when they bore in. You know, once you agree to sit down with somebody and you're presented with these open-ended questions, the whole dynamic of that interview process changes in favor of the prosecutor. So I think that the prosecutors here, the investigators here, understand that Donald Trump's weak point is his pride or his hubris, and so he may be perfectly innocent and not having done anything illegal or inappropriate, but that at that point that doesn't matter. Something that you say that just comes out of your mouth in the moment can and most likely will be used against you by a very determined prosecutor, and I think that's what we have.
All right.
The president would be very
I was thinking that it's when that the prosecutor doesn't have any evidence that he would then go after every open-ended question he could come up with in the hope that the target will give some responses that give you state of mind, or that the target just starts trying to prove his innocence by continuing to talk and make himself more and more vulnerable. His open-ended questions are designed to get the perp to start talking. Specific questions limit if the perp is smart. Anyway, aside from all that, the question I wanted to hold you over and ask you about is, why do you think this has all been leaked? What do you think? Whoever did it, for what purpose? Have you had any thoughts on that? I'm just asking anybody. Everybody's opinion counts here today, as far as I'm concerned on this.
Well, it's impossible to know. I think that you can make a very strong argument that this information was leaked in order to warn the president away from this.
But why would you have to leak it to do that? If his lawyers have these questions, why couldn't they take him in the Oval Office, shut the doors, say, you do not want to get anywhere near this. This is the last place you want to be.
You don't know what's going on inside those quarters. And the president, we all know that the president listens to certain outlets, Fox and Friends. He probably listens to you and a couple of others.
And there's nobody telling him to sit down and talk to this guy. Everybody out there is telling him not to do it.
No, we don't know that. And don't forget that the appeal of the prosecutors to the president is an appeal of pride. I mean, it's a very clever one. It's a very clever appeal. You go after a person's weak point. You know, the original Greek story about the Achilles heel. You know, Achilles was a very powerful warrior who was basically immune everywhere except his heel. That was his weak part. Well, what do we know about Donald Trump? His weak point is his pride.
Okay. All right. So Mueller could be saying, Mr. President, look, everybody here knows that you didn't do this. And we really need to hear it from you, and we can batten this down. We can wrap this up, but we just need to hear it from you. So you think that Trump might be susceptible? I know a lot of people who would think Trump would buy into that yesterday. If Trump is needed to end this, if Trump's the guy that can bring this, and if Mueller, and remember, Mueller can lie, Mr. President, look, we all know what's going on here. You had nothing to do with this, but we can't wrap this up until you definitively tell us what we have to know here. I know people who think Trump would fall for that simply because it appeals to his ego. It appeals to, like the caller says, his pride and so forth, and how he is totally necessary and needed for this to happen. Remember, if you're Trump, there's something else. If you're Trump, you're sitting there knowing full well you didn't do any of this, okay? And I don't believe he did, folks. I think the people that colluded and have attempted to overthrow the outcome of an election are all on the Democrat side, are all on the Hillary DNC side. We know they rigged the election to primaries against Bernie Sanders. We know that. We know they hired Steele. We know all of the chicanery is on the other side. So if we assume that Trump didn't do it, he knows better than anybody he didn't do it, and he's got to be driven crazy by this. I would be. As a mayor of Realville, I would have gone nuts by now after all this. If I'm being pursued for something that didn't happen in the first place, and A, I didn't do it. But anyway, that's just speculation. We still don't know. And like the caller said, we may not know where these questions came from and what the purpose is. But people have their thoughts and want to weigh in. Richard, thank you for holding on. Who's next, Mr. Snerdley, before we hit the... Okay, that'd be Ken in Orlando. It's great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Just great. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. But everything that's been said just bolsters my position about Trump, and he's his own worst enemy because he does have a huge ego, but it's very fragile, and he's got a poor self-image. I think Stormy Daniels...
Whoa. Did you say poor self-image?
Yes. That's why he surrounds himself with so much opulence. And that's why he's best at what he does when he has a rally. He surrounds himself with people that absolutely love him. He has nothing to defend himself there. But when he gets into stormy waters, no pun intended, her attorney is filing a defamation suit against it for something that happened allegedly because of her supposed relationship with him. And then if you watch Trump when he's facing a bunch of people he's having a conference with, whenever he crosses his arms in front of him, that's a defensive measure because he's either unsure of his position or he's afraid of the response he's going to get. So he's very thin-skinned and he's afraid most of the time. The only time it's
really?
A sign of a good salesman too.
So you think Trump is inside? He's a quivering mass of jelly who's insecure and is afraid people are going to find out that he's insecure.
Yeah, if he goes one-on-one with Mueller, they're going to find that little chink in the armor. He's going to go ballistic, and then they'll have, it doesn't, like you're pointing out, it doesn't have to be anything. 8:45 in the morning. Well, yesterday you said it was 8:30, and they're going to build on that, and they're going to build.
Well, why does he want to talk to Mueller then?
He shouldn't. That's because he thinks he can overcome that. All during the campaign.
Wait a minute. That doesn't fit with somebody who has a poor self-image. Somebody who has a poor self-image is not going to want to be in a room where Robert Mueller is. I'm fascinated by the way people think. So all this is cool, fine with me, folks. Don't get upset. I'm fascinated by it. Whether people are informed, not informed, or whatever. It still fascinates me. The way people think, because when you learn that, then you can work with that when you find out how people think, when you find out how they arrive at conclusions that they have drawn, or if they're feeling rather than thinking. So all of that is valuable to me from both a PR and marketing standpoint as I host the program. I'm glad you called out there, Ken. I got to take a break because the constraints of the programming format. Be back after this. It's close enough, but it's not exactly what I remember him saying. He has described how it would be impossible for any outsider to literally steal or determine the outcome of a federal election. This bite that we have goes back to October 18th, 2016. And here Obama is chiding Trump. Trump at the time is talking about the potential for voter fraud amongst illegals. He's out there saying that millions of illegals are going to vote. And he's also alluding to the talk of Russia tampering. It was out there, but it had not reached the crescendo that it was to become, because at this point in time, keep in mind when you listen to this, everybody thought Hillary was going to win. They were convinced that they had fixed the election for themselves. They were convinced Trump did not have a prayer. Hillary was going to win one of the biggest landslides ever when Obama makes these comments. And it's like 2-3 weeks before the election, it was in the Rose Garden, joint press conference, Obama and the Italian Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi. And the question came from a Reuters correspondent. Donald Trump is telling his supporters the election's rigged. He's asking them to monitor certain areas on Election Day. How concerned are you about the potential for violence? And what about after Election Day? Are you worried the results of the election may be distrusted?
I have never seen in my lifetime or in modern political history any presidential candidate trying to discredit the elections and the election process before votes have even taken place. It's unprecedented. It happens to be based on no facts. Every expert, regardless of political party, regardless of ideology, conservative or liberal, who has ever examined these issues in a serious way will tell you that instances of significant voter fraud are not to be found. Doesn't really show the kind of leadership and toughness that you'd want out of a president. You start whining before the game's even over. So I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
Right. So now that comes close. I mean, here Obama's talking about voter fraud, and people have looked into it, and there's never been any evidence of it. I mean, he gets real close here. And, you know, when Obama does these things, he always constructs these straw men, such as every expert, Republican and Democrat alike. That's how Obama always tried to establish credibility with whatever point he was making. Well, Republicans and Democrats alike agree. Both conservative and liberal economists all agree. Conservative and liberal climatologists all say. That's one of his techniques. He says they've examined the issues in a serious way, and I'll tell you instances of significant voter fraud are not to be found. You could easily suggest he was including Russian voter fraud. It just has never been found. But there's another instance. I don't remember when it happened. It might have been in the spring of 2006. Now, Obama talked about this a lot, and he actually got close to detailing why it would be impossible for a foreign actor to steal or even determine the outcome of federal election based on things I've said, too many precincts, too complex. Now, here's Obama, December 16th, 2016, at a press conference. And they were talking about Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election, and this is what Obama said about it.
The Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC in early September. When I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out. There were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't. And in fact, we did not see further tampering of the election process.
Okay. That one gets close, too. This is after the election. This is December 16th. So we're basically 5 weeks after the election. The Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC. We don't know this because the DNC never turned over their server to the FBI to be forensically examined. We don't know the Russians hacked the DNC. There are still people who think that it was an inside job, folks. And for a simple reason. There is a log of the transfer of data from the DNC network servers to places off-site. And the speed The transfer speed of the data is far faster than anything you could get online. The transfer speeds are faster than even, a T3 line, a gigabit Ethernet line. They are gigabit Wi-Fi. They are faster than the speeds are the speeds you would get if you plugged a thumb drive into the USB port and transferred that way. And that's why people think it was an inside job. Whatever was on the DNC server and wherever it ended up, WikiLeaks or wherever, because those data speeds could not have been achieved over the internet. And that is absolutely true. And then Obama says, I'll talk to Putin, I'm going to tell him to cut it out. What a tough guy. I'm going to tell Putin to cut it out. And then December 16, 2016, Obama says, in fact, we did not see further tampering of the election process. Can you imagine these deep state guys and Steele and Comey and these clowns at the FBI trying to work up this theory that Trump colluded with Russia? And here's Obama saying, in fact, we didn't see further tampering of the election process after the DNC hack. We didn't see further tampering of the election process after, in Obama's words, the Russians hacked the DNC server. I mean, he cut the stage out from underneath the deep state in their efforts to prove that Trump was behind colluding with the Russians here. So, of course, nobody did anything with this soundbite except us, and focusing on the tough guy Obama telling Putin to cut it out. And we are preparing it for broadcast even as we speak. I knew I've heard this. I think I've even played the soundbite on the program. And I'm not sure of the timing. I think it was in the spring. My memory is it was in the spring. But whatever it is, it doesn't matter. He said it. And it was before the 2016 election. And my memory is it was well before it. Anyway, welcome back, folks. Great to have you here. 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushmo@eibnet.us. You want to hear a weird story? Trump's ex-doctor, his former personal physician, that long-haired, maggot-infested-looking guy. What's his name? Bornstein? What is his name? I think it's... I'm not sure his name, but I think that's it. Anyway, this guy is saying his office was raided by Trump's bodyguard and top lawyer. And CNN can't keep their pants up over this. CNN is going bonkers. NBC broke the story. Everybody's running their version of it now. Now, Trump's doctor sat on this for a long time. And this doctor is estranged from Trump. This doctor has not treated Trump in years, but he was at one time Trump's personal lawyer, and the information he provided at one point showed Trump to be in perfect health. Now, Harold Bornstein is Trump's ex-doctor, and when he says that it was Keith Schiller, Trump's bodyguard, well, Keith Schiller was fired shortly after Comey was fired. Keith Schiller was the former New York cop. If you remember during the campaign, this guy was the first off the plane. Everybody thought he was Secret Service. He was Trump's personal bodyguard. Been with Trump for a long time. And he was always on stage. He was just never more than 5 steps away from Trump. Burkhardt, Gray, just a mountain of a guy. You looked at this guy and you knew that he was solid steel bodyguard. Anyway, Keith Schiller was given the letter to James Comey announcing he was fired and told to deliver it to Comey's home, which he did. But Comey was not home. He was in Los Angeles. In fact, soon to get on the airplane to come back to Washington, he was in an LA FBI office meeting when he got the news on TV that he had been fired. Shortly after that, Schiller was no more. I don't know why. I don't know what precipitated it. But this doctor is claiming that Schiller and a Trump lawyer raided his office and took with them Trump's medical records. Well, Schiller hasn't been around for over a year now, so I don't know when this supposedly happened, but you get used to it because the drive-bys are going absolutely ape over it. For all of the predictable reasons. Well, there must have been something in there that Trump didn't want anybody to know, and that's why he went in there and literally stole his own health records. So we'll see how this pans out. Kanye West, let me get to this before too much time goes by. Kanye West yesterday at about 20 minutes after 1 tweeted the following. Now, you know, Kanye West has been tweeting about the idea that African Americans need to start thinking for themselves. They need to remove themselves from the Democrat Party and its clutches. And he has been tweeting the Democrat Party hadn't really done anything for black people, and that it's time for black people to start taking care of themselves, thinking for themselves, and they don't all have to sound alike, don't all have to say the same things, don't all have to think alike. And he has been catching grief from all of the usual leftist quarters. Yesterday afternoon at 1:20, in a continuation of that theme, he tweeted this: "We're opening up the conversation to the psychologists, the sociologists, and philosophers of the world, and we're moving away from infiltrating the youth and using them as a tool to create a cult following based off a desire to fit in. People have their own voice." Folks, I read that, and I have to tell you that he is so right on with this. I don't know if he even knows how right on he is. I was shocked and stunned when I read this, how right on the money it is. It's another way of saying what I have long complained about or warned about with social media and the internet, about how it is psychologically destroying young people with the worst kind of peer pressure you can imagine. It's creating a desire for fame and a desire to be known and a desire for a life that television presents celebrities live. That every night is a red carpet opening somewhere. That every night is everybody wanting to take your picture. That every night is everybody wanting you to be where they are. That every night is hobnobbing with fellow stars. And that every night is the result of you having all the money you could possibly want. You have it all. You have fame. You have attention. You have money. You get to go to parties. This is what social media popularizes in covering celebrities. The entertainment networks on TV and on the internet, that's how celebrities are presented, because these journalists want access to them. And the journalists want to be invited to the same parties so they can cover what's goes on at these things. And so people get on social media, they start lying about how exciting their lives are and who their friends are and all this. And it makes people feel inadequate because they're not living lives like that, and creates all kinds of psychological problems. So then those people will do whatever's necessary to fit in with whoever it is they think is hip and having a great life, having a great time. And Kanye West has just spelled out the danger of this. We're opening up the conversation to psychologists, sociologists, and philosophers of the world, and we are moving away from infiltrating the youth and using them as a tool to create a cult following based off a desire to fit in. This is so right on the money. And his point is that all of this is being done to further a political cult following. That's what he means. The political cult following is of the Democrat Party, of liberalism, of looking at things with a leftward tilt. So let me read it to you again with that understanding. We're opening up the conversation, meaning we're breaking away from the cult. We're opening up the conversation to psychologists, sociologists, and philosophers of the world, meaning we're going to get some input here from people that we have not been listening to. We're moving away from creating a bunch of mind-numbed robots who become a cult following based on the simple desire to fit in. We're going to blow that model up. Meaning you can get people to do whatever you want if you promise them they're going to be hip, they're going to be cool, they're going to be included in whatever the cool people are doing. And he wraps it up. People have their own voice. So what he's saying is that he is at the forefront of a movement that is designed to get people out of groupthink, essentially. And in so doing, he is painting one of the biggest bull's eyes on himself that he could paint. But he's not finished. He's now tweeting thoughts from Dr. Thomas Sowell. You know, Thomas Sowell has written newspaper columns for years, and every now and again he'll have a random thoughts column where the column is made up of 1- and 2-line thoughts and opinions on current events. And for Thomas Sowell to be known by Kanye West and then to be promoted, folks, there are people, I'm one of them, who have been trying to get the words of Dr. Sowell to African Americans all over this country for the express purpose of educating them and liberating them from the groupthink and the stagnant existence that is theirs because they are loyal Democrats. For Kanye West to join the battle, this is not an insignificant thing. Good morning, brother. We have been chosen again to see another day to evolve, another day to inspire, is the opening of a tweet thread from Kanye. And then here's the next tweet. And these are the thoughts of Dr. Sowell. Number 1, it takes considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of your own ignorance. Number 2, people who enjoy meetings should not be in charge of anything. Number 3, the most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is best. The welfare state is not about the welfare of the masses, it's about the egos of the elites. And he tweeted all that out. He tweeted it out to however there's 27 million followers on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. I guarantee you they've never seen anything like this. They've never been exposed to anything like this. And this is causing the beginnings of a gigantic ripple in the giant pond of the Democrat Party. Maxine Waters. Kanye West is a very creative young man who has presented some of the most revolutionary material, but sometimes Kanye West talks out of turn, and perhaps sometimes he needs some assistance in helping him to formulate some of his thoughts. So Kanye is now talking out of turn. This is not cool. This is very dangerous. Kanye is talking out of turn. He is deviating from the orthodoxy. Now, a former member of Snoop Dogg's rap entourage is calling for gang members to assault Kanye West for his recent support of Donald Trump. Daz Dillinger, who recorded several successful hip-hop records as part of the Dog Pound duo in the 90s, made the apparent threat in a video posted to his Instagram, which was later removed. Yo, national alert, all the Crips out there. Y'all go out and mess Kanye up. Referring to the Crips, the infamous Los Angeles area street gang, which also has some members in the NFL. I'm just kidding. I got in trouble for that one day. Just kidding. But the Crips is a legit street gang, and this guy from Snoop Dogg's gang is asking them to all go out and mess Kanye up. Now, Dillinger, real name is Delmar Drew Arnaud, or Arno, is warning Kanye to stay out of Long Beach, stay out of California, even though Kanye and the Kardashians live in Calabasas, northwest San Fernando Valley. Better not ever see you in concert. Better not ever see you around the LBC. Better not ever see you around California. He says in the video, stay in Calabasas. You hear me, Kanye? Because we got a Crip alert for Kanye. And in the message reading, mess Kanye up, except it's not mess, it's the F-bomb. Mess Kanye up posted on Dillinger's verified Twitter account. I wonder if this Dillinger guy is going to end up being banned from Twitter. Ha ha! I'm whistling Dixie, I know that. This guy will not be banned from Twitter. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it has now spread to Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush, the former star at USC and in the NFL, has gone and gotten conservative on Twitter. Something about the Kardashians may be causing this, because Reggie Bush used to date Kim Kardashian before Kanye came along. On Sunday morning, Reggie Bush went into a conservative line of questioning over the IRS. He said, this might be a dumb question, so I'm apologizing ahead of time, but who audits the IRS? How do we know exactly where our tax dollars go and that they're being used the right way? And then there's another tweet here from Reggie Bush about Cardi B, another rapper getting into tax policy now. Cardi B says she's paying 40% in taxes. She wants to know where the money's going. Now, I don't want to make too much of this, but it hasn't happened. As I say, there have been all kinds of efforts underway to force this kind of thinking into the mainstream African-American community. And it's, you know, Jack Kemp had his enterprise zone ideas, and, you know, other people have done it. And there have been people like Candace Owens that have been over the last number of decades. There have been renegades who have gone public. Some NFL players have. Owens? Burgess Owens, yeah, from the Washington Redskins. He's fabulous, but it's not ever found its way outside of conservative media where these people go public. This is finding its way in the belly of the beast, and Maxine Waters actually has tweeted twice about Kanye. Now the Crips putting essentially a hit out on the guy. As I say, don't want to make too much about it, but the only reason this is happening is Donald Trump, folks. There isn't any other Republican president be inspiring this kind of thing. Just saying. Because about 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, Kanye tweeted, if you want to see the true character of a person, watch the way they treat someone who can't do anything for them. Of course, that is a signature philosophical quote of mine. I said it the same day. We had done going back and checked the transcript. Said it that very day. And there's a tweet underneath Kanye's from somebody, well, I'm not going to name him. And the tweet, Mega Dittos Yeezy. And then they quote from my transcript that day in encouraging Kanye to keep going. So, okay, so that's that. Here's Obama. And what's the date? It's October 18th, 2016. And it's from the same press conference with the Italian Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi. So this is essentially 3 weeks before the election, October 2016. And Obama gets a question. Donald Trump is telling his supporters the election is rigged. He's asking them to monitor certain areas on Election Day. How concerned are you about the potential for violence? And what about after Election Day? Are you worried the results of the election may be distrusted? Now listen to this answer.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized and the numbers of votes involved. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past, or that there are instances in which that will happen this time.
Now, I'll have to acknowledge, remember at this time, everybody thinks Hillary is going to win. And so the reason Russian tampering was restricted to the DNC server during the pre-election harangue about this, they didn't want to taint Hillary's ultimate election, which they knew was going to happen. It's a crucial element here. Everybody, including Obama, thought she was going to win in the biggest landslide in history. In a rival landslide that Johnson had over Goldwater in '64. And so they weren't going to do anything to taint her election. But in this instance, Obama's telling the truth. There's no serious person out there who would suggest that you could rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized, the number of votes involved. There's no evidence it's ever happened. And now look where we are. Now we have totally disrupted the normal ebb and flow of this country for over a year and a half now on an impossible premise, and for which we know a bogus document was written and publicized and then mistakenly or erroneously, purposely miscast as legitimate intelligence when it's nothing but political opposition research. Obama, not possible. And it isn't. It would not be. And yet look at what we're doing. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. I want you to grab audio soundbite number 26, and I want you to keep it standing by, because I'm going to go back to it. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a certain sense of security that comes with having a properly functioning security system in your home. Now, most people think that it is out of their reach. I mean, to have a good one. I think a good one is out of their reach. They've seen them, they've seen how involved they are, and it's something they'd like to have, but it's way down the priority list. But I'll tell you, when you have one, the confidence that you have when you leave home and alarm your system, you know that if there's a fire, if there's a break-in, that you're going to be alerted, and if you get the monitoring service provided by Simply Safe, the cops in the fire department will too. You know that if somebody tries to break in through a window or a door, loud sirens are going to go off, the police are going to be notified. This is how people with a Simply Safe home security system feel. You know, in fact, I was just reading one of my tech blogs today, and one of them reviewed the latest Simply Safe system, and they're raving about it. And they're raving about it because of its simplicity. And they're raving about it because of the do-it-yourself nature in terms of the installation. And they make a point here that if you get the monitoring, which is only $14.99 a month, you get an app on the phone that allows you to monitor the system off-site, to manipulate it, and basically keep in touch with what's going on. If you have cameras installed, which you should do, you should make them part of the system, outside the front door, inside the house. See, this is a new kind of home security. It's new because it's wireless. And that is such a big deal. You might think it isn't, but just from the installation alone, it is huge. And it means, literally, you can do it for yourself. Now, some people, I've talked to people about this, and they think that if they can install it themselves, it can't be good. It's not, that means it's not complicated enough or intricate enough. And see, that's the point. It is exactly as good as anything you can get. But the fact that there are no wires mean that it's much less expensive, much less involved, and much less prone to the little incidental faults. You got a break in the wire, an animal chewing through a wire or something. You never know. You start tracking down faults in wires. You eventually you don't arm the system, is what happens, rather than going to the hassle of fixing it. You know, you have your keypad, and if there's a fault in a sensor on a window or door, it might report that if you can translate what the system is telling you, what the keypad's telling you. With Simply Safe, there is none of that. You simply stick the sensors on the doors and windows that you want protected, and you deploy motion detecting sensors, glass breaking sensors, cameras, throughout the house and outside if you want. But all of this connects to the central base station via Wi-Fi, so nobody can cut the wires and break down your system. But it's so much easier to install, and it's that much more reliable. So don't think simplicity makes it any less effective. It's just as effective. And don't think that being able to do this yourself means it's not that good. The exact opposite. In fact, they've got customer service surveys. They do them constantly, and they've noted that many of their customers say that one of the greatest things they experience after installing it is the sense of achievement and accomplishment of having done it. You really should look into this. It's simplysafeusa.com. That's the website. You don't need any offer codes to get any deals. That's all tied in with that address. Now, remember, the monitoring, that's letting the cops know when there's a break-in or fire department. It's only $14.99 a month, and there's no contract to sign, so you can cancel it whenever you want, if you want. You shouldn't, but you can. Go online and see this yourself. SimplySafeUSA.com. There's not a stock system. There is. You can buy it, but this is a la carte. Pick the number of sensors you want based on the number of doors and windows you want protected. Pick the number of cameras. Put it together yourself. They'll select everything you want, pre-test it, configure it, and send it to you, and you're up and running inside of an hour. Apartments, condominiums, homes, wherever you live. Go online at SimplySafeUSA.com. Oh, there's a 2-month money-back guarantee, meaning you get to try it for 2 whole months. And if you don't like it, rip it out, send it back to them, and they'll send all of your money back. You can't lose on this. Back to the phones, Robbie in Sacramento, my adopted hometown. It's great to have you with us. How are you doing?
Hi, great. Hi, Rush Limbaugh. I've been listening to you on KFBK out here since the 80s. So long enough to know that you are a good judge of music, and I am calling to request a music recommendation. But first, a confession of my own artistic ignorance. I had no idea that Kanye West was such a thoughtful person, and I love thoughtful music. I love thoughtful poetry. One of my favorite albums of all time is The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and now I want to check out Kanye West. I'd like to purchase a song or an album, and I know he's made a lot of music, and I don't know where to start, and I was wondering if you had a recommendation for a particularly thoughtful song or album that would be a good one for me to start with.
Well, I don't at this moment, but in mere moments, I will have a suggestion for if you keep your radio on.
Okay, and then may I, while I give you time, may I make another comment about the correspondence dinner and
Sure.
the Me Too movement?
Have at
Okay.
it. It's your call.
So I found it very interesting that at the correspondence dinner, it was a female who so vulgarly harassed Sarah Sanders. And I find that so interesting because I'm a millennial. I'm on the upper spectrum of the age, upper side of the age spectrum on millennials. So I've had enough time to get a taste of the professional world. I've experienced a good deal of sexual harassment from men, but hands down, no contest. It has been women who have given me the most harassment and made professional life the most miserable for me.
Can you describe for me
contest.
how does what form does the harassment from women take place?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is a constant suggestion that they make that because I have a good working relationship with some of my male colleagues, that it's because of the way I look, or that it might be because some sexual component.
Yes, I'm not surprised by any of this, Robbie. None of it.
Yeah, and so totally degrading my professional skills, my mind.
They're basically they're accusing you of sleeping with these people, and that's why you're doing well, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then also discriminating against me for the way I look. And it has constantly been women that have caused me to want to change how I'm going to dress. Or wear my hair at an interview or going to work, choosing not to wear makeup, choosing to dress a little frumpier. Things that where I just don't want it to get in the way of my professional success. So yeah, it's not been fun, and they've been savage. They've just tried to destroy me, tear me down, and without fail, it's been men who have championed me professionally, told me I could do things I didn't think I could do as a woman, and I have not had that support from other females.
Yeah, none of this is either a surprise or even news to me. The fact that women can be vicious to one another is something that's not often discussed because the current climate is focused on the mean-spiritedness and evilness of men. But believe me, I have seen it. I have seen the viciousness. It is mean. They've done movies about it. Mean Girls, for example. I have seen it. I once observed long ago, if you've been listening to this program since the late 80s on KFBK, whether you remember it or not, you have heard me share an observation. You're walking down the street, you look across the street, and you see an attractive woman. You're a guy, you see an attractive woman. And just there, you can't help it. It's nature. What you don't see is other women staring daggers at her for daring to be dressed the way she is in public, or what. You don't see that because you're not looking. But it can be vicious out there, and especially in an inter-office complex arrangement where there is a ladder of success everybody's trying to climb. So I have seen it. I haven't obviously, not being a woman, I haven't experienced it, but I've seen it, and I know how vicious it can be. You've had to actually modify the way you dress just to reduce the kind of the ration.
I'm a little hesitant to admit this because I did it for strategic reasons, but I wonder if it was compromising integrity. But I have chosen to wear 10-year-old shoes to an interview. I've chosen to put my hair in a bun for an interview when I knew I was going.
Wait, with another woman? Was it a woman?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Or
so you didn't want to appear threatening or challenging in any area where she might have felt superior to you.
Right, because this is, in my opinion, generally true about women, is they don't want another woman in the room that they feel like might outshine them in any way.
Yeah, I'm not going to divulge anything in court, but I know exactly what you're saying, Robbie. I have seen it. I've not been a victim of it, obviously. We men have our own problems in this regard, and they're the same. They manifest themselves in different ways, but we have the same problems. I once got fired. I was working for a pathological liar, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I felt like my intelligence was being insulted. I called this guy. I said, Would you stop bragging about this stuff that didn't happen? You don't know this person. You didn't work there. And I got home in 30 minutes, and the owner of the radio station was on the phone firing me because the guy, he happened to be my boss that I was telling, and he had called the owner of the station, and he said, this guy is really off the rib. But I couldn't handle it. I just couldn't. Mm-hmm. Pathological lying is something I do not deal with. I do now. I know how to look the other way and forget it. But back then, it was just one of the pet peeves. We all have various pet peeves. That was one of mine. But look,
yes.
Keep your radio on. We'll have a couple Kanye suggestions here for you before the program ends, because we got a Kanye expert here.
Great, thank you.
On the staff. Anyway, I appreciate the call. It's great to know you've been listening to KFBK since the late '80s. That's awesome. Yes, with the lovely Kitty O'Neill. Oh yeah, who is still doing a wonderful job. Oh, she's better than ever. She's great. Absolutely fantastic. That's okay. Well, you're bringing back so many great memories of my adopted hometown. Robbie, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Thank you. You bet. Be back here in just a second.